At 95, I've learned a lot about life. I've buried friends, outlived my strength, and watched the world move faster than my legs ever could. But if I could go back and change one decision, just one, it wouldn't be a business choice, a relationship, or even something I said to someone I loved. It would be this. I wish I had changed my health at 40, or 50, or even 60. Instead, I waited until I was 70. At the time, waiting seemed reasonable. I told myself I was doing fine. My friends ate the same foods I did. My family never pushed me to change. When doctors warned me about my blood pressure, my weight, my sedentary lifestyle, I nodded politely and went right back to my old habits. After all, I had survived this long, hadn't I? And besides, I'd start later, when things slowed down, when I retired, when I was forced to. But once I finally changed, once my body forced me to, I realized the truth. The health I thought I'd been preserving had been quietly slipping away for decades. I know many of you might be in the same place I was. Maybe you're telling yourself you still have time. Maybe you've been promised that your metabolism, your genetics, or just one more year will protect you. Maybe you think taking care of your health means living like a patient, giving up comfort, surrendering joy. I thought all of that too. But before you make the same mistake I did, I want to share 5 hard lessons I learned the hardest way. These aren't just about disease or medication. They're about freedom, connection, and the years you'll never get back. They're about the life that shrinks when your body weakens and the opportunities that disappear when you can no longer move through the world with strength. Stay with me until the end, because what I learned in my 70s, what I'm still learning at 95, might change the way you live your life today. And if you know someone who keeps saying, "I'll start next year," this might be exactly what they need to hear before they run out of next year's. Now let me take you back to where it all started to go wrong. The biggest shock after I finally started taking my health seriously wasn't the early morning walks, the unfamiliar vegetables on my plate, or even the daily pills lined up on my counter. It was the realization that the damage had been done years before I felt a thing. In my 40s and 50s, I felt invincible. I worked long hours. I'd slept little and ate whatever was quick and easy. I sat more than I moved. I drank more than I should have. When my blood pressure crept up, I told myself, it runs in the family. When my weight climbed, I said, that's just what happens when you get older. I was strong. I was capable. I could still lift heavy boxes, work a full day, and keep up with my kids. Health problems were for other people. The ones who didn't take care of themselves, the ones who let themselves go. But the body doesn't work that way. The body is patient. It absorbs your choices quietly, accumulating damage in places you can't see, your arteries, your organs, your bones. It compensates. It adapts. It keeps you functional, until one day it can't anymore. The first real warning came when I was 68. I was walking through the park one evening. The kind of peaceful walk I'd taken 100 times before. The sun was setting, the air was cool, and then, without warning, my chest tightened. Not pain, not yet. Just pressure, like someone had placed a heavy hand on my sternum and was slowly pressing down. My breath vanished. I stopped walking and stood there, confused, waiting for it to pass. It didn't. I looked around, suddenly embarrassed, and sat down on a nearby bench. I pretended to admire the trees, the sky, the ducks on the pond, anything to hide the panic clawing at my lungs. After a few minutes, the tightness eased. My breathing returned. I told myself it was nothing, stress, indigestion, a fluke. But deep down, I knew. A week later, I sat across from my doctor, arms crossed, waiting for him to tell me I was fine. Instead, he looked at me with the kind of honesty that cuts through denial. "This didn't start today, Michael," he said. "This has been building for years." And that's when it hit me. All those mornings I skipped breakfast and grabbed donuts at work. All those nights I collapsed on the couch instead of going for a walk. All those doctor visits where I nodded along but changed nothing. The damage had been silent, but the consequences were starting to speak. Let me tell you what those years looked like. The ones that led me to that park bench, gasping for air I couldn't find. In my 40s and 50s, I was a machine. I woke before dawn, worked until dark, and collapsed into bed with barely enough energy to say goodnight to my wife. Rest felt like weakness. Taking breaks felt like failure. I was productive. I was providing. And I told myself that's what strong men did. Breakfast was whatever I could grab. Donuts from the break room, fast food on the drive to work. Lunch was eaten at my desk, usually something fried or processed. Dinner was late, heavy, and followed immediately by the couch and the television. I told myself I'd earned it. Exercise? That was for people with time. People who weren't building something. People who weren't tired. When my doctor told me my blood pressure was climbing, I shrugged. Runs in the family, I said, as if genetics were a shield instead of a warning. When my pants stopped fitting, I blamed the dryer. When I started feeling winded climbing stairs, I told myself I was just getting older. I wore my neglect like a badge of honor. I was too busy, too important, too strong to worry about my health. That was something I'd deal with later, when I retired, when I had time, when I wasn't carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. But your body doesn't wait for permission to break down. It keeps score quietly. Every skipped meal replaced with junk food. Every night of poor sleep. Every year of sitting more than moving. The damage accumulates in places you can't see. Plaque building in your arteries, inflammation spreading through your organs. Your metabolism slowing, your muscles weakening. You feel fine, you function, you keep going. Until one day, you can't. That evening in the park, sitting on that bench pretending to admire the sunset while my chest screamed and my lungs refused to fill, that wasn't the beginning. That was the consequence of 10,000 small choices I'd made over 20 years. When my doctor said, "This didn't start today, Michael," I finally understood. Health doesn't collapse suddenly, it erodes, and by the time you feel it crumbling, you've already lost more ground than you ever imagined. The damage was silent. But now it was learning to scream. After that park bench incident, I promised myself I'd change. I really did. For 2 weeks, I ate better. I took walks. I checked my blood pressure daily like a devoted patient. My daughter called to check on me, and I assured her everything was different now. "I'm taking it seriously," I told her, and I meant it. But then the chest tightness faded, the fear subsided, and my old routine started whispering to me, "Just this once won't hurt. You've been good all week. You deserve this." The couch felt too comfortable to leave. The remote was right there. The takeout menu was easy. Walking felt like work, and work was the last thing I wanted after working all day. Slowly, meal by meal, day by day, I slipped back into the life I knew. I told myself I didn't want to live like a patient. I didn't want my entire existence to revolve around medications and restrictions and fear. I wanted to live, to enjoy my food, relax in my chair, not obsess over every little thing. My daughter noticed. "Dad, are you still walking?" she'd ask during our weekly calls. "Here and there," I'd say, laughing it off. "Don't worry so much, I'm fine." I wasn't fine, I was comfortable. And comfort, I learned, is far more dangerous than pain. The collapse came on a Tuesday morning. I was 70 years old, standing in my kitchen making coffee, when the room tilted. My legs gave out. I didn't trip, I simply stopped working. One moment I was standing. At the next, I was on the floor, staring up at the ceiling, confused and ashamed. My daughter found me an hour later. She had a key and had stopped by to drop off groceries. I heard her voice calling my name, footsteps rushing, and then her face appeared above me, pale, terrified, searching my eyes for answers I didn't have. "Dad, Dad." The fear in her voice broke something in me. At the hospital, I lay in a thin gown under fluorescent lights while doctors prodded and tested. Dehydration, they said. Poor nutrition. Weakness. Preventable, they said, but only if I'd actually prevented it. Lying in that bed, I realized something brutal. The discomfort of changing my habits would have been a fraction of the pain I was feeling now. The shame, the fear in my daughter's eyes, the loss of dignity as strangers helped me to the bathroom. I could have been uncomfortable for an hour a day. Instead, I was suffering for weeks, and the suffering was just beginning. That day, I made a different kind of promise, not to try, not to start and stop, to change. For real, no matter what. But even then, I was already late. After that hospital stay, I changed everything. I started walking every morning, slowly at first, just to the end of the block and back. I threw out the processed foods and learned to cook real meals. I took my medications on schedule, tracked my blood pressure, drank water like it was my job. For the first time in decades, I treated my body like it mattered. And it worked. Within months, I felt better. My energy returned. My breathing improved. People noticed. "Michael, you look great," they'd say at church, at the grocery store, at family gatherings. My daughter hugged me tighter, relief flooding her face. "I'm so proud of you, Dad." I was proud too. I'd done it. I'd turned things around. But here's what no one tells you about starting late. You can get better, but you can't get back what you never protected. I could walk again, but only for short distances before my knees protested. I could play with my grandchildren, but only sitting down, my lap their playground instead of the yard. I could travel, but with careful planning, frequent rest stops, and a bag full of medications. The moment I understood this completely came on a Sunday afternoon. My grandson, 7 years old and full of fire, grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the backyard. "Grandpa, race me to the tree." I laughed. "You go ahead, buddy. I'll watch." "Come on." He tugged harder, his eyes bright with challenge. And I took 2 steps, my knees locked, my breath shortened. I stopped and waved him forward, forcing a smile. "Go, show me how fast you are." He sprinted across the grass, arms pumping, legs flying, disappearing into the kind of effortless movement I would never know again. I stood there, watching, and felt something crack inside my chest. Not pain, but grief. That night, alone in my room, I cried. Not because I was sick, not because I was dying, but because I finally understood what I'd lost. I could improve my health. I had improved it. But I couldn't reclaim the years I could have lived stronger. I couldn't recover the man I might have been at 70 if I'd started at 50. I couldn't rewind time and race my grandson across the yard with legs that still remembered how to run. The body can heal, but biology has limits. Our muscles that atrophy for decades don't fully rebuild. Joints worn down by years of neglect don't regenerate. Time compounds, both your efforts and your neglect. I was grateful to be better, but I would never stop mourning what I could have been. What I didn't expect, what no one warned me about, was how small my world would become. It happened gradually, an invitation to a friend's birthday dinner. It's across town and I'm just too tired. A weekend fishing trip with the guys. My knees can't handle sitting in a boat all day. A family reunion. That's too much travel, too many stairs, too much standing. At first, people understood. They called to check on me. They offered to adjust plans, to pick me up, to make things easier. But after enough declined invitations, the calls came less often. Not because they stopped caring, but because people build their lives around the people who show up. I became someone who didn't show up. My friends moved on. They made new memories without me. They stopped asking because they assumed the answer would be no. And they were right. The days grew quieter. I'd wake up, take my medications, eat my careful breakfast, and settle into my chair. Sometimes I'd read, sometimes I'd watch television. Mostly I'd just sit, watching the light move across the walls as morning became afternoon, became evening. One Tuesday I realized I hadn't spoken to another person all day. Not a phone call, not a neighbor, not even the mail carrier. Just silence and the hum of the refrigerator. I looked around my living room, the chair I sat in, the table where I ate alone. The windows I watched the world through, and understood something painful. My world had collapsed inward. When your body is strong, your world is large. You can walk to the park, drive to see friends, travel to new places, join clubs, attend events, stay connected. Your physical capacity determines your access to life itself, to relationships, experiences, community. When your body weakens, every boundary moves closer. The grocery store feels far. The neighbor's house feels distant. Eventually your world shrinks to the size of your home. Then your living room. Then your chair. It wasn't loneliness born of tragedy or loss. It was loneliness born of neglect. The consequence of years spent ignoring the body that carried me through the world. I didn't lose my friends because they abandoned me. I lost them because my health built walls I couldn't climb. And by the time I realized what was happening, I was already living in a prison of my own making. A prison with soft cushions and familiar silence, but a prison nonetheless. The hardest lesson, the one that still keeps me awake at night, is this. Every bit of suffering I endured was built on a single word: later. Later I'll start walking. Later I'll fix my diet. Later I'll take the doctor's advice seriously. Later I'll rest, I'll change, I'll care. Later. 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 I said it at 45 when my pants stopped fitting. I said it at 52 when my blood pressure climbed. I said it at 60 when my knees started aching and my energy disappeared. I said it at 68 when my chest tightened in that park, and every time I said later, I believed it. I genuinely thought I had time, and that next month would be easier. That next year I'd finally be ready. That later was a real place I'd eventually arrive at. But later never comes. It just becomes too late. Here's what haunts me most. I can picture the alternate timeline so clearly. If I'd started at 50, just walking 3 times a week, eating real food, taking my health seriously, I'd have been strong at 70. I could have played with my grandchildren, traveled with my wife, lived without limits, without medications, without that chair I spent so many silent days trapped in. If I'd started at 40, I might never have needed that hospital bed at all. We delay health decisions because they feel optional. We delay them because we're busy, because change is uncomfortable, because our bodies still work, until they don't. We tell ourselves we'll start when we have more time, more motivation, more fear. But here's the truth most people learn too late. The discomfort of discipline is temporary. The consequences of delay are permanent. My regret isn't about the heart scare or the medications or even the loneliness. My regret is about the man I could have been, the grandfather who could have run, the husband who could have danced at his daughter's wedding without needing a chair, the friend who could have shown up. Later is the most expensive word in the human language, and I paid for it with decades. Sitting here at 95, I can see it all so clearly now. Most of my suffering, the weakness, the isolation, the lost years, wasn't fate. It wasn't genetics. It wasn't bad luck. It was optional. And I chose it, one later at a time. The call came at 87, another hospital, another sterile room, and another machine beeping the rhythm of a life barely holding on. I lay there, wires snaking from my chest, an oxygen tube beneath my nose, staring at the ceiling tiles I'd memorized over 3 days. The doctors spoke in careful tones about management and quality of life, words that mean we can keep you alive, but we can't make you whole. I lifted my hands and looked at them under the fluorescent lights. These hands had built a deck for my first home. They'd held my daughter the day she was born. They'd signed contracts, fixed engines, planted gardens. Strong hands, capable hands. Now they trembled, not from fear, from weakness, from years of neglect finally collecting their debt. In the silence between beeps, I had a conversation with the man I used to be, the 45-year-old who skipped breakfast for donuts, and the 55-year-old who was too busy to walk, the 68-year-old who ignored the warning in the park. "What would you tell me?" I asked him. He would have laughed, called me dramatic, said, "I'm fine, I'll deal with it later." "But you didn't," I whispered back, "and now I'm here. I wasn't afraid of dying." At 87, death doesn't scare you, it's just the natural end of a long story. What terrified me was this: I was dying with strength I never used. All those years my body begged me to move, to nourish it, to rest, to care, and I said no. I hoarded my energy for later, and now later had arrived as a hospital bed and machines that breathed for me. This is what they don't teach you about health. Preventive care feels like effort, but reactive medicine feels like failure. One is a choice, the other is a surrender. And I closed my eyes and let the truth settle over me like a blanket. I could not change the past. I couldn't go back and walk those miles. I couldn't undo the meals, the choices, the neglect. The man I could have been was gone, buried under decades of later. But maybe, just maybe, I could still shape the future. Not mine. I'd already written that story. But yours. If you're reading this, if you're listening, if you're still telling yourself you have time, let my ending be your beginning. Let my regret be your warning. Because I can't rewrite my story, but you still can. After that hospital stay, something shifted in me. I couldn't change my past, but I refused to stay silent about it. I started telling my story, first to my daughter, then to my grandchildren, to the nurses who checked my vitals, to the neighbor who brought me groceries, to anyone who would listen. Some people heard me, really heard me. My grandson started going to the gym. My neighbor joined a walking group. A young nurse told me she'd been putting off a doctor's appointment for months. She scheduled it the next day. But others, they nodded politely and went right back to their lives. I'd see them choosing convenience over care, comfort over change, and I'd recognize the look in their eyes. It was the same look I'd had for decades, the look that says, I know I should, but not today. Not yet. Later. And my heart would break all over again, because I knew exactly where that road led. One afternoon, a man in his 50s visited me, a friend of my son-in-law. He was overweight, out of breath from the stairs, making jokes about getting old. You know what I wish someone had told me? I said to him. That small changes compound. You don't need to run marathons or live on salads. You just need to move a little more today than you did yesterday. Eat one real meal instead of 3 processed ones. Drink water, sleep, repeat. He laughed. Sounds easy when you say it like that. It is easy, I said, but only if you start. The hard part isn't the doing, it's the deciding. I don't know if he listened. I hope he did. Because here's what I've learned in these final years: consistency beats intensity. Small daily actions compound into years of strength, or years of decay. You don't need perfection, you need direction. You don't need to transform overnight, you just need to stop saying, later. 15 minutes of movement, 1 healthy meal, 8 hours of sleep. Do that today, then tomorrow, then the next day. And in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, you'll look back and realize you've built something extraordinary. A body that still works, a life that's still large, a future that isn't defined by regret. I can't live that life anymore, but you can. And if my story, my mistakes, my suffering, my lost years can save even one person from walking the path I walked, then maybe all of this meant something. Maybe my regret can become your rescue. I'm 95 now. I've lived a long life, longer than I probably deserved, given how I treated my body for most of it. I'm grateful for the extra years my late changes gave me. Grateful for the mornings I still wake up, the sunlight I still see, the voices of my family I still hear. But I will never stop regretting that I waited until 70. Because here's the truth I've spent 25 years learning. Your health isn't just about living longer, it's about living freer. When your body is strong, you can go where you want, do what you love, show up for the people who matter. You can run with your grandchildren, dance at weddings, travel without fear, live without asking permission from your limitations. When your body fails, your world shrinks. Your freedom disappears. Your choices narrow, and no amount of money, success, or love can buy back what you lost by waiting. So if you're reading this, if you're the person I was at 40, at 50, at 60, please don't learn this the hardest way. Don't wait for the collapse, the hospital bed, the moment your daughter finds you on the floor. Don't wait for the chest tightness, the trembling hands, the realization that you can't do the things you once could. Don't trade decades of strength for the comfort of delay. I told you at the beginning, at 95, I've learned a lot about life, but there's one decision I deeply regret. Waiting until 70 to change my health. I changed. I survived. I'm still here. But I could have been so much more. I could have been the grandfather who ran, the husband who danced, the man who lived large instead of small. That man is gone. But you still have the chance to become him. Start today, not Monday, not next month, not when things slow down. Today, walk for 15 minutes, eat 1 real meal, drink water, sleep, and tomorrow do it again. Because your body is listening. It's listening to every choice you make, every excuse you tell yourself, every later you whisper into the void. And one day, sooner than you think, it will answer back. Make sure when it does, you have no regrets. I'm Michael, I'm 95, I changed my health at 70, and I'm telling you now, don't wait as long as I did. Your future self is begging you. Thank you for watching.